Hi, welcome to the Kwazzie Show. This is Mazza
And
and
Mary.
and
Mary?
Mary. Yeah, well, I'm actually Mary Ann, but we can't have all these Mary Marys on the show. So today's show is really interesting to invite you to look at ways of how we handle chaos, major stress in our life, and emotion. With
Emotion. I love the
emotion.
way Mary Ann says emotion.
Yeah, I always say
It's
things like that
it's
differently.
it
People are like,
feels like it's got a whole lot of love behind it.
yeah, emotion. Yeah. So where do you want to start with this, Mary? Because it's a really valuable piece for people to cope with life and feel more certainty.
Yes. So, well, I've certainly noticed in the last few days a lot of chaos around me, and it has prompted the question, how do we manage this? What do we do? And what are the things that can keep us centered? So those are the things I'd like to discuss today, Mary Ann.
Yeah, good. And I'd like to talk more in that coping mechanisms around, emotional intelligence, because that's the key to allow people to really unpack what's going on for them at any given moment so that they don't, reach too much for unhealthy choices to try and cope, because the problem's still going to be there,
Yeah.
afterwards. So,
Yeah. And it would be
yeah.
great for people to have some of those tools. It can be very difficult when you're in the midst of something to have that wisdom to step back and unpack it. So if you've got some tricks up your sleeve, Marianne, I think that
Yeah.
would be valuable.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I used to be a very high energy, intense level reactor. And now I've been studying emotional intelligence. I find this incredible balance of awareness, because self-awareness is the key. And the more you practice self-awareness, when these big bumps show up in life, then you have the genuine ability to calm yourself down very quickly and notice, wow, I'm flipping out right now,
Yeah. So how do you do that in the moment? How does anybody find that still place or that?
Well, it's like this, right? We've got to understand the background of where we come from. Like we've come from the survival era, and this goes back to our culture. Most people came from the farming community, and then we all moved into the city, right? And we built these big buildings, and we've become these condensed beings trying to survive amongst the masses. But back then, a great thing I read a while ago, or heard in a presentation actually, was, way back then, if somebody said, look, I'm going to go for a run, everyone would have said, why? Who's chasing you? Because
Ah,
you didn't need to exercise and take care of your body back then. You just worked your guts out on in that sort of heavy duty farming sort of stuff. Now we've moved to the cities, and if someone said I'm going for a run, well, like you're a runner, Mary, you would go. Everyone go, oh yeah, cool. She's going
yeah,
to
off you go. And
exercise.
it's such a nice release too.
Yeah,
Running can be quite meditative and restorative. It gives you time to
yeah,
brain
exactly.
just filters out, and I'm not a runner, I'm not built for running, but I enjoy the process and it just lets me think.
Yes, so we know that exercise is really healthy. We know that from a scientific point of view as well as an emotional and a intellect, the whole bit. So we know that exercise is an important part of our process. But now, Mary, we live in the technology age, right? So we've got
Yeah.
all this information coming to us. And so therefore, we know now we actually have to have new ways of coping with our mind. And this is why, back then, if there was a major disaster, everyone would stand around the campfire, scratch their heads, and come up with a bit of a group solution. What do you reckon, mate?
Yeah, good point. Yeah. Yeah,
Have,
well,
have a beer and calm down and let's just think this through. Or you'd
yeah.
just be ready, Eddie, to handle things because you were really tough and resilient from that survival era.
Yeah,
So,
that's very
yeah.
interesting. I'm just considering the examples that came through my pathway today, and the information and different points of chaos can come at you very quickly through email, through social media, through a Skype call, someone knocking at your door, the telephone can go off. It can all happen simultaneously. It's quite so. There isn't the opportunity to step back from the campfire. So what does one do in that situation? How do we center ourselves and work through it without becoming overwhelmed?
Well, you can't, Mary, unless you're self-aware, unless you start practicing a new way of being, which we'll get into. How about we get into that a little bit more in depth when we come back from the break?
Looking forward to it. Thanks, Marianne.
Welcome back.
Welcome back.
Welcome back, Mary.
Hey, we touched on a few good starting points there, Marianne. One obviously about emotion and how we manage it in times of chaos, and then we move through to awareness and how we create awareness.
Yeah. So we can't cope with anything. It's like, if you were back in that sort of exercise era and I hadn't practiced lifting 50 kgs and I came in and went straight for it. Like I'm gonna struggle, right? So you've got to build your muscles up. So it's the same with the mind. We've got to practice mindfulness. We've got to practice self-awareness and attention training, all sorts of things, and even meditation. So you've got to know that you actually have a mind. And
it's a great place to start, isn't it?
Yeah, and pretty important that you kind of know how it works or how to manage emotion. So
okay, so just touching on that for a second, when we say you've got to know we have a mind, what are we doing if we're not aware? In that simplest form of having a mind, if we're not aware of that, then we are just believing that we don't have a choice. Is that what we're kind of saying here? Is that the difference?
Well, if we don't have any self-awareness, we go straight into you are the emotion, right? So there's no separation from that. It's just like if I said to you, Mary, I'm really, really angry. I'm going to kill someone. Right? I've just had a guts full of this, blah, 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 and I was just threw myself into this chaos. Opposed to if you were a practiced mindfulness person, or you'd really, even gone to meditation, yoga, things like this, you would probably word it something like, I'm really noticing, Mary, that I'm getting really stressed right now.
Right.
So just by noticing, you've created a gap, you've created a separation. So you're not the emotion, you're noticing it's really starting to affect you.
Yeah, that's pretty powerful in itself. I was just thinking to my early days of motherhood and how that can be remarkably overwhelming because you've got a lot of stuff going on with your body and you've got this other little person to take care of, and it does at times I just only just made that connection right now. At times it feels like you are just pure emotion. And even then, to have had that little trick of saying to myself, I am noticing, well, that could have made quite a difference to my stress levels at that time.
Yeah, because you don't want to become it. So as soon as you are allowed to, as soon as you have enough awareness to notice something, then you have a choice.
Yeah.
So
okay.
I'm noticing I'm getting really stressed out right now. I'm going to kill someone. So at that point you go, okay, so I don't kill someone, I need to call for help, or I need to make another decision. So it makes way for the space to make a choice, a decision, take care of yourself in that moment. Or at times like that, most people that have no then tools from there will reach for relief. Like, I need a drink. So it's the first go-to. I need a drink. I need a cigarette. I need to stuff my face with some food, whatever the coping mechanism is. A man might, go straight to the computer and, want to look at porn, or, this is how addiction is created, through the lack of self-management and understanding of emotions.
Because you're obviously, once you become aware of it and you begin to take responsibility for it, and that can be a little bit overwhelming as well, can't it? If you actually then recognize you have to change or correct a behaviour or own that behaviour?
Well, you can't change anything that you don't first recognise, Mary.
No, but do you see what I mean? Like if I choose not to recognise it and just reach for the drink, it can be a lot more pleasurable experience than actually owning the emotion and then
But you're going to just
cleaning up.
You're just going to repeat the cycle.
Yeah.
So whatever the problem is, it's like I remember coaching a lady years ago who had lost her husband, and she went on antidepressants for a couple of years, and she was actually a really quite aware person. And then she came off the antidepressants 2 years later, and she said to me, do you know, if only I realised it was blocking my grief. And then after that 2 years, then she had to go through the whole grieving process because she wasn't feeling the loss and the pain and what went with that. So she put herself backwards 2 years. So, you know, we can ask ourselves, well, you know, what's the solution? Well, we can go and reach for relief and take a pill, and we can do all these things, and there's nothing wrong with having coping mechanisms at all. We're just trying to soothe ourselves in that moment. But the more that we can actually increase our self-awareness, then we've got more choice, more freedom, healthier outcomes, and less suffering, basically.
Yeah, and potentially more joy in life, and that's what would be the great outcome, wouldn't it? Actually having joy and being able to share that with people.
Yeah, and to be able to defuse instead of self-soothe through other unhealthy behaviour, to defuse your emotion by even, I was listening to a neuroscientist the other night on a TED talk, and she said that in any given emotion only lasts 90 seconds. So if you sat with it, if you had enough awareness to go, okay, I'm noticing I'm feeling really stressed right now, and just closed your eyes and felt it, that's only 2 seconds, right? So
90 seconds. It could seem like an eternity, but
it could. But the more that you're just present, breathe. You know, anger management will teach you all sorts of techniques like that. But as soon as you are aware of it, breathe and know this too will pass.
That's a nice phrase. I like that one. This too will pass.
Yeah, that's the famous Eckhart Tolle one. And so this too will pass. And, you know, we go through these cycles. We go through, but if you're repeating a cycle that is causing suffering to yourself and others, then it's time to have a look at it. Would you agree, Mary?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So let's take a quick break, and we'll be back in one moment. Welcome back.
Welcome back. Hey, Marianne, I noticed that we talked quite a bit then about awareness, and I'm interested in how we sustain that space and what sort of work we need to do this on a daily basis.
Well, how you do that, Mary, it's like any practice. So whatever if someone's practicing chaos and drama in their life now and in the blame game, and it's always somebody else's fault, and we can get into that real big matrix through societies, institutions, governments, you know, it's always someone else's fault. So to ask ourselves that question, you know, what can I do to change my attitude, my position, my circumstances? How can I feel better? And it's that self-inquiry that is the key piece, and that comes from practicing things like mindfulness and meditation. And we know the research around that, Mary, is phenomenal.
Yes, and just before we talk about that research, I know you were speaking off air about the question around what sort of mother I can be, what sort of friend can I be. So they're quite self-inquiry questions. And how can I be in service, or what could I do in this moment?
Yeah, so a lot of people, you know, we're at the high end now of marriages splitting up, you know, worldwide, and people are sort of seeking answers. Some women go and buy a little dog and sit at home and drink wine every night, and you know, I used to do that, so I've got a great empathy for women like that. And then, you know, others are, you know, screaming at the kids and upset about this and hate work and all of these things. But ultimately, whose responsibility is it? So who am I being?
Who am I being? That's the
yeah,
question.
Yeah, who am I being? Am I being a person that is, you know, self-improving, or am I just self-soothing the problem?
Yeah, and who am I being for myself? Am I being a person that I'd like to be with or sit next to? Am I being that kind of person? I spent about a year. This is one of the quirky things I do at times, Marianne. I spent a year about 3 years ago focusing on who am I being. And it was very revealing. I wasn't focused on what am I doing. I was thinking, who am I being? What sort of friend am I being? Which is what you just mentioned. What sort of mother am I being? And without judgment on that either. I was just noticing, who am I being? Very revealing.
Really valuable stuff. I just ran a 28-day journal challenge on Facebook, and every day would be a self-inquiry prompt, and people would journal for 2 minutes, and the feedback was phenomenal by people that just loved it. You know, asking really, really valuable questions like, how do I honour myself? Which came up today, actually, Mary. I think it's really good to mention, because if we expect somebody else to value us or honour us, and we're not even honouring ourselves by our actions, our beliefs, our feelings, you know, and we're not self-improving in some way, and, you know, why do we have to? Well, I'm talking to the people that are suffering, you know, and by all accounts, through being a coach, and you'll notice it as well, everyone's suffering. Today was a really big day of suffering, I noticed.
It's a massive day of suffering today. I had people reaching out for me in all directions, and big hurdles out there.
Yeah, and a lot of people are stuck in, I'm just so over it, you know, how much work. And some people that are doing the work, I had one client say to me this morning, how much more do I have to do? And I tried to explain to her that, you know, everything is energy. You know, I'm an Albert Einstein freak, right? So, it's been scientifically proven. Even NASA knows that the Earth is surrounded by a magnetic field. And so if we are going into a supermarket, or we're in an environment that the energy is always stressed, it's negative, you've got people at each other all the time, you know, that actually affects us. And there was a study just recently done, which I actually saw on Facebook as well. In a school in America, they've set up 2 plants in the foyer. And the plant on the left, they're about 10 foot, 12 foot apart. The plant on the left, they have got the children to say, speak nasty words to this plant so we can show everyone what bullying does, your words do. And so everyone would go past and bully the plant by talking to it. It was in a glass thing. They couldn't touch it. And then the other plant, they would say kind words to this plant. Now, this study has been done years ago, and it's finally been put as an example to children in schools. Within a matter of weeks, the plant that was being bullied started wilting and going brown and dying, and the other one grew about 3 foot. So it was a remarkable example of how our words affect us. So if you're looking in the mirror, Mary, and we're saying things to ourselves like, oh my God, I look terrible, you know, or we're slandering somebody over there, or we're getting angry with that person, or things just don't happen for me, or whatever we're saying affects our energy. So the point is, and our energy has a frequency. So we've got to raise that somehow by going for a run, by having stress coping mechanisms, by, if you don't want to learn to meditate, you're crazy, because the science behind that is phenomenal. And corporates now are just, leadership is going through the roof all over the place because studies are just phenomenal to increase focus, production and revenue.
Yeah, and even if you don't want to meditate, the simple act of noticing
and taking a breath,
taking a breath, and then asking those clarifying questions of yourself. Again, we talked about what sort of mother, what sort of friend, who do I want to be? Who is my best self? Who am I
Yeah.
being?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, and owning it, taking responsibility. Like I had somebody this morning that reached out to me that I hadn't heard from in a while, and he was very, very nice. And I thought, and it triggered me. And I thought, he's only ever nice when he wants something, right? And then I turned the cosmic mirror around and I thought, I used to be just like that. Right? Really owning it. I'm only ever nice to someone if I want something. And this is a part of the ego that we just have to claim. You know, we're all human.
We are all human.
You know?
We are all human. Gosh,
Yeah.
I tell you, we've covered a few things here, Marianne. Perhaps.
Yeah. Well, let's take a quick break and we'll come back and wrap it up and see what we can offer.
Great.
Welcome back.
Welcome back. Wow. We have covered a few things here, Marianne.
Yes, yes. And I think it's important to clarify the key point here, you know, in self-awareness, self-management, looking at our emotions. All this we've got to do is, I can honestly tell you, Mary, is the kinder we can be to ourselves and the more we can honour ourselves first and foremost, only then, my friend, will we have enough space to be able to offer that genuinely to others. Otherwise, it's back in that ego. Oh, he's only been nice to me when he wants something.
Yeah, and it's back to that survival idea that we talked about right at the beginning of the podcast about how we are not really conditioned to being nice to others, or because we were all about survival. But now we've moved on, haven't we? So it's important to be kind to ourselves.
Yeah.
And build up from the internal.
Yeah, we're not really programmed to be nice to ourselves, I think, more than others. You know, yeah. And so another thing to consider, and I think it's going to be the next podcast, Mary, is why we have all this stuff, you know, why we get so stressed out, blame others, get in chaos, drama, apart from being, you know.
And why do you think that is, Marianne? Why are we getting stressed out? What's the driving force behind that?
Well, it's something I'd really like to discuss in detail. Part of it is that we're addicted to it. And secondly, it's all fear.
Fear.
Yeah.
Fear. We're operating from a space of fear.
Yeah. So let's it's about that survival stuff, you know, and so we've moved on from, well, we need to move on from there. We need to act differently and be differently. So fear is a big topic. So let's talk all about fear on the next one. How's that sound?
Let's talk about fear. And for now, let's encourage everyone to be kind to themselves.
Yeah, honour yourself, you know.
Honour yourself.
Yeah, and that's a really valuable piece. If everyone just honoured themselves, we'd have no drama, Mary.
Wow. That would be a nice experience.
Yeah.
And certainly from what I've seen today, I'm sure a few other people would like to experience that as well. So drama-free lives.
Yes. Well, I don't know if we can ever be drama-free, but we'd be pretty close to it, you know. And so thanks for listening, everyone. If you really enjoyed this podcast, please like and share. And we'll see you next week. Bye for now, Mary.
Bye.